Hi guys, so we are probably gonna start losing the light halfway through this video as it is now 6:30 and I've decided to film a YouTube video. I need to buy myself some lights so that I don't have these struggles. But I've got my computer just here with all my stats on it. I've decided to film my every book I've read in 2018 video as I just saw Books with Zoe or Books by Zoe, Zoe Reads. I don't know, I watch her all the time and I can't even remember her name. So I just saw her video of that. So I've decided to film my own. So next to me here, you can see the corner of it here, I've got my piles of books that I read. And I read a total of 31 books by the looks of it. I read a total of, I should put this here, a total of 12,440 pages across 31 books, which I'm pretty proud. Like, that sounds pretty amazing. The shortest book I read was 170 pages and it was Every Heart a Doorway. And the longest book I read was Dragonfly Inn, Ember, and it was 976 pages. The average book length that I read was about 401 pages. The most popular book that I read was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and the least popular book I read was A Curse of Ash and Embers. My average rating was 4.1 stars, which is actually pretty high actually. Usually if I like a book, I give it 3 or 4 stars, and 5 is like really good, so I must have had a lot of really good books. And my reading challenge, I did complete my reading challenge. I read 32 out of 30 books, which makes me a little bit confused because it said 31 books earlier. So I'm not sure. But anyway, I completed the reading challenge of 30 books. So the first book that I read in 2018 was Children of Eden by Joey Graceffa, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Now, I can't really remember that much of it because it was so early and I read it on my Kindle e-reader. So, I mean, it was pretty good. It was basically about a girl, it was in a society where you can only have one child and they had 2. And so she kind of had to like hide from the world, and it was her almost like here I am type story, which it was really cute. I really liked it. So the second book that I read was Red Sparrow by Jason Matthews. I gave this book 3 stars, but I don't know, thinking back on it, I don't think it was that great. It took me a really long time to get through. Like, it's got very small writing. I watched the movie and I didn't really pay enough attention to the movie to know what was going on. I watched it in cinema, but I wasn't that into it. So I decided reading the book might give me a bit more clarity, and I feel like it did, but at the same time, I still didn't like it that much. So I don't know whether that's an unpopular opinion, but... So the next book I read was Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I really like the series. I haven't finished the Mortal Instruments series, but I think I've finished the 3rd book and I've kind of like stopped reading it. But I really, really like the Infernal Devices so much more. And I don't know why, but it's just like my favourite. But I still haven't gotten to Clockwork Princess because a lot of people say that you need to be reading it in like publish order, and which means that I need to read most of the Mortal Instruments series before I can read Clockwork Princess. So whether I ever get to it, I don't know. But I did really like this book. This was a very good book. So the next book I read was The Naughtiest Girl in the School by Enid Blyton. Now, this was around the time that the newspaper, the local newspaper, I think it was the Advertiser, was doing like a collect the Enid Blyton collection situation. And so I decided that was what I was going to do. And I read The Naughtiest Girl in the School and I gave it a rating of 3 out of 5 stars. And I used to read this all the time at my grandma's house when I was younger, and I loved it and I still do. It's just so good, and it's part of a series as well, so I haven't read the rest. The next book that I read was Dragonfly Inn, Ember by Diana Gabaldon, and it is the second book in the Outlander series. There are a lot of them. And once again, another series I'm not so sure I'm going to ever finish just because it is so big, or I at least won't finish it anytime soon. But I liked it. It was just very, very slow moving, like super slow moving. I've never ever experienced such a slow moving book in my life, and it was huge. It was the biggest book that I read. It was almost 1,000 pages if I remember, and it is humongous. It took me a really long time to read. The next two books that I read kind of come in a pair. So the first one is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and the book after as well I read both on the same day as a part of like a readathon, and it was so that I could get roller skates because my boyfriend promised that if I read 2 books before he got home from work, I would get roller skates. So I did really like this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I don't really know how to describe it. I mean, it's a contemporary, obviously. There's no dragons or anything in that like that in it, but it was quite nice. Like, and then the other book I read for the readathon was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I plan on rereading this sometime soon, as I just read it so fast that I don't remember much of what happened. So I was able to get through it. I did definitely read it, but looking back, I almost don't like it because I don't know what happened. I kept saying I don't like it, but I gave it 3 stars, but that might go up because I know that a lot of people, it's got an average of 4.46 stars, but I gave it 3 because I couldn't remember what was going on because I think I just read it too fast. Anyways, so I'm going to reread this year so that I know what is going on. The next book I read was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and shock horror, this is the first time I've ever read the series and I still have not read the whole series. So last year while I was in New Zealand, I decided to bring both Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets, and I got through both of those, and that's as far as I've gotten in the series so far, but I did really like this. This is so much better than the movie, and I'd want to get through the rest of them, but I was waiting to buy the rest of the books, and I bought a whole new set. So I've got a nice hardback set, but they only came in the summer holidays that we've just had, and I just simply haven't gotten around to reading them, so I did love it though, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book that I read was Afire by Sarah J Maas. Big surprise. I love it. I think this was definitely like a changeover book, if that makes sense. I gave it 4 stars. But I feel like the first 2 books were really just, what was the girl's name? Selena. The first 2 books were Selena just kind of learning about who she is and coming to herself. But these books, she's really, really grown up. Like, she's having to take on so much more responsibility, and I don't know. A lot of people will say that the 3rd book is kind of the breaking point for them where they don't go ahead, but I have read up to book 5, and I don't know. This I think was my least favourite book in the series, but I do still quite like it. The next book I read for 2018 was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. Manis, and I gave it 5 stars. This book also has really nice spread pages. Nice. It didn't take me long to read, actually. This is quite a quick book. And they've just released a 2nd one as well, which I'd really like to pick up, but I don't know. But it's basically about a geek, a jock, a criminal, and a princess, a murder. Who would you believe? And it's basically where there are 5 kids in detention, and the kid who dies is deathly allergic to peanuts, and he dies in detention from a cup of water. And the only people that were in there to witness the death was the geek, the jock, the criminal, and the princess, and one of them had to murder him, or somebody in that room knows what happened, but none of them are telling each other what happened. It's a good mystery, it's good little fun, like it's not crazy, but it's good for quite a younger audience. But I did actually really like this a lot. The next book I read was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, and once again gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Still my first reread through this series, unfortunately, but once again, this was so much better than the movie. I was always obsessed with movies when I was younger, but I just never ever read the books, and I don't quite know. I was a very sporadic reader when I was at the age of being able to read these, because I used to love reading in primary school, but these were just a little bit, I don't know, I just didn't read these for some reason. But as soon as I hit high school, when I was probably the right age, if that makes sense, to be reading the whole series, I don't know, I was just very sporadic. So I didn't really read them, but now I have read them, or this one, and it was so good and I loved it. The next book I read was Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. I don't know, every single time I try to say this last name, I can never say it, and I don't know why or what it is about it, but I just can't. This book is amazing. Now, I gave it, I only gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Anyway, I love this series so much. I mean, there are some problems in it. The ending was a little bit, but I love it so much. It's basically about a girl called Audrey Rose, and I love her so much. And it's set in, I'm not sure, I think it's about the 19th century that it's set. And she wants to be a forensic scientist, which is obviously very looked down upon by everybody in that time period. But she is determined to become a forensic scientist, and she works with her uncle, who is one. And the Jack the Ripper murders, it must be 1888 that this was set. The Jack the Ripper murders are happening, and her and her uncle are trying to figure out who did it, and the end is a bit of a surprise. The next book I read is Orange by Ichigo Takano, and it is a manga, and it is the first manga I ever read, and it's really cute. I read it because Books with Chloe was reading it in her weekly vlogs at the time, and I just thought it looked really awesome. I haven't bought the next one still. I keep telling myself to buy the next one, but it's like $30, and so I'm a little bit like, that's just a little bit steep, isn't it? But anyway, I did really like this book. This was a very good book, and I gave it a 5 stars. No surprise there. I seemed very lenient with the ratings that I gave books last year. Next book I read was Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, which I gave 5 stars. But looking back on it, I feel like it's more of a 4.5. There was a few issues in this book that I found, but overall I did really like it. It's basically about Simon, and he is gay and he's just trying to like find his way around in life and with his friends. I don't know, it's very cute. It's very cute, but I reckon I would drop that rating to a 4.5. The next book I read is the first book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, called A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it's by Sarah J Maas, and I gave it 5 stars, and it took me a very long time to get through this. But when I did get through it, I was like, oh my goodness. I'm very excited for the second book, because most people say that the second book is the best book in the series, but it's basically a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but from a perspective of fairies and humans. And anyway, it was very good. Whatever was going on then, but yeah, it was a very good book, and I really, really liked it. Next, I read Release by Patrick Ness. I gave it 3 stars, but honestly, I want to drop that to a 2. Patrick Ness is usually a really great writer, and so I was a little disappointed when I read this, but I was very lenient on the star rating. But I don't know, it was just not that great, to be honest. I mean, I can't even remember what it was about. It wasn't very memorable. I'm pretty sure he was gay, and his parents were like priests or something, pastors of the town, and they lived in a small town, but he was gay, and his friend who he liked was moving away, and his parents did not agree with that because he's not meant to be gay. But then his brother got some chick pregnant, and yeah, there you go. There's a little rundown of this flop. Next book I read was Carrie by Stephen King. Did I read this around Halloween? Was I not quite up to that? I read it towards the end of the year. Last year was a year where I really wanted to read a lot more, but the beginning started quite sporadic and it just kind of got better as the year went on. But anyways, this was a good book. I really liked this book, but I wasn't that keen on the writing style. So although the story is great, I love Stephen King, I loved the story, I love this story. I wasn't that keen on, like there's just a lot of, it just switches between all sorts of stuff. So like there's things in brackets that are like her inner thoughts that aren't really a part of the story, but it's still written down. It keeps switching between current time and future articles and stuff that happened after the incident that happens in the end. I don't know, it was very back and forth, but overall I did like this book. This was a good book. So next book I read was The Short Second Life of Brie Tanner by Stephanie Meyer. Now did I read all the Twilight books? I don't think I read all the Twilight books, but I tried to when I was younger. I reread the first and second books in 2017, I believe, and I still haven't reread the fourth book, but I've definitely read the whole of Eclipse, as that was my favourite because it was the only one I owned at the time. So I purchased this. I don't know why, I just liked that it was really, really short. I think I read this during a readathon, and I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. It was not very good. I mean, it's all well and good like showing a little bit about Brie Tanner, but honestly, for a book that is so small, it felt like it was taking forever to get through. The next book I read was Hunting Prince Dracula, which is the second book in the Audrey Rose series. I don't actually know what the series is called, but it's by Carrie Maniscalco. And no surprise, I gave this 5 stars. I loved it so much. Audrey Rose and Thomas leave London and go to study in the most prestigious forensics school in Romania. And she is the only girl and she really has to prove herself. But unfortunately, she still doesn't get in. Poor girl. I felt so sorry for her this whole time. And during this, Dracula, or Prince Dracula, was around. But the twist in the end, honestly, is so much better than the first book. I really did think that I liked this book even more than the first, which is crazy because I really loved the first book. But the twist is just brilliant. It is so amazing and I loved it. The next book I read was the 4th book in the Throne of Glass series, Queen of Shadows by Sarah J Maas, and I gave it 4 stars. I liked it better than the 3rd book, but still this is not my most favourite book in the series. I definitely liked the 5th book much, much more than this one, which I will get to shortly. But overall, I mean, it's Throne of Glass, like it's great, I love it, so it doesn't matter. The next book I read was Death Note by Sugumi Oba. So my boyfriend wanted me to watch the Netflix show with him, or the anime, or whatever you want to call it, with him, but I said I refuse to watch it until I read the books. So far I've only read the first book, so I'm not that far through, but I gave it 5 stars. I really liked it. I don't know, it was just, I know that it's pretty much the exact same as watching the show, but I definitely enjoyed the experience of reading the book. It was very nice. I loved it. It was lovely. So, yeah. The next book I read was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and I gave it 3 stars. This book was quite slow. So I believe it's set in the 80s, 70s, I'm not sure, but it was very slow moving, it had good, what do you call them, like good morals? No. It had a good message, like it was really interesting to dive into the mind of Margaret Atwood. But, I don't know, my housemate also read this and she thinks that I would enjoy the TV show more as I am a very visual person and I just couldn't really visualize what was going on in this book very well, and that is like really important for me while reading, being able to visualize what's happening. So the next book I read was Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff, and this book makes me want to read the rest of the series, which I didn't think it would. This is really heavy as well for the size of it. It doesn't look very big, but it's very heavy, and it's got a lot of pages in it too. So it's got like 600 pages. But I really liked this. At the beginning, I was a bit like, oh, I don't know. But towards the end, I was like, oh my goodness. The only thing that annoys me a little bit is like how like sometimes the words do this, and it got quite confusing. Like, I don't know. It was very interesting. It was very like interesting visually, but it did get a little bit confusing at times. But I did very much like this book, and I do want to get to the next one. The next book I read was Mirage by Samaya Dad. And I gave it 4 stars, and I read this just before my first Our Crate box, as it was the book of the previous box, and I decided to join the Our Crate book club a little bit early so that I could join them while reading Mirage, and I liked it a lot. I do remember really liking this, and it's basically about a girl, and if I'm thinking of the right book, I hope I'm describing the right book to you. But it's basically about a girl who looks identical, hang on. Yeah, it looks identical to the princess or the queen, I can't really remember, but the main girl is much poorer, and she is basically taken away from her home to go in place of the queen when it's like dangerous situations that the queen is supposed to be facing. And it's just quite interesting learning about, there's a lot of different things, like the queen's empire has basically forgotten all about their old cultural things, and I think her name's Amani. Yeah, Amani obviously learned the old languages, and she loves poetry, and this is very, very different. So there's like a boy that she meets, and he is quite taken by all her knowledge on the old cultures and stuff. But it's also a sci-fi, which is a little bit different, being a sci-fi fantasy, but I really, really liked it a lot, and I gave it 4 stars. Next book I read was Sapiens, and as you can tell, this was very researched. This is the first book I've ever actually like tabbed up properly. I occasionally will write a little bit about books that interest me, but I really quite liked this book a lot, and I felt like it was important to tab this. But it is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari, and it is huge, and it took me a really long time to get. I don't think it's actually that big, but you know, it took me a long time to get through. And it was so interesting though, like a lot of the stuff that they say kind of lines up with what I learnt in evolution classes, and it's quite interesting because it doesn't just focus on evolution, like it also focuses on like almost like human development, but throughout the ages, like different things that people said and thought. Like I remember there was something really interesting basically about how back in the olden days women were basically property and worth less than pretty much everything. The next book I read was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and it was very small, it's very little. It didn't take me very long at all to read because, I mean, the pages, although it's got like 200 and something pages, the pages are that big, like they are tiny. And I didn't actually give this a rating on Goodreads, but I would have to give it about a 3. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't amazing. And it was basically about this man who, I don't even remember, like he just wanted to go traveling, and there was like a really cute part where like he met a girl and he knew that the girl was gonna wait for him to come back from his travels, and it was just really cute. I did like it. It's just, yeah, I liked it, but it's so tiny and it's so cute. Next book I read was Empire of Storms, which I gave 5 stars. This would have to be my favorite book so far in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J Maas. I haven't read the 2 books publish after this one, but I did really like this particular book. It was very nice, very lovely, and I loved it. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. But it was basically her ascent to the throne, would be the best short description of what that book is. Okay, now moving on to my first ever Owlcrate box, which was very exciting. So the first ever Owlcrate box I ordered was the September box, I believe. Might have been October, I might have ordered it in September, I'm not sure. But the first book ever was Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. And I knew I recognized this name from somewhere, and it turns out she wrote the Immortal Rules, which I can't think of what the series is called, which I haven't actually read, but I own a copy of the first book, and I really liked this. So yeah, the first box contained 2 books, and it was lost in a bookstore. So this was almost randomly themed, this box, but this was really nice. I really liked this book. This was very cute. It was basically about a girl who could turn into a fox. She was magical. And there was a scroll which, if you have 3 parts of the scroll, you can, I can't remember, there was something to do with a dragon, and it was going to be like really intense, and they needed to keep the scrolls safe. But there was a big fire, so she had to take the scroll to somebody else, and one of the people who wanted to steal the scroll actually accompanied her on her trip to find the other temple where she could warn them about the scrolls and the people wanting to steal them. And yeah, I quite liked it. It was quite a big book actually, like it didn't take me too long. It was quite interesting, but it is relatively thick. But I did like it. This was definitely a good first book from Owlcrate for me. I received Pride by Ibi Zoboy. Yeah, it's basically a Pride and Prejudice retelling. It's really cute. It's basically about Zuri, and she lives in this neighborhood, and there is a really expensive house that is being built across the road from her apartment complex, and it is where, I can't remember what his name was. Darius. So where Darius is moving in, and he is the attractive young boy, the new boy to town, and he's like super rich, and there's a little bit of conflict between these 2 characters, but it ends up being very cute, and I really liked it, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, so the second to last book of 2018 for me was Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire, and it is very small, very small indeed, but I loved it so much. It's basically about these children who can go through doorways, and these doorways lead them to a different place, and they will be gone for a really long time. When they come back, they are often sent to a special school, and it follows a few different characters and them going to this school where it's basically helping them return to the normal world from where they previously came from. And everybody just wants to find their door again, but not everybody can. And there is a series of murders happening as well within this school, which just makes everything so much more crazy because they need to find out who's murdering all the special children so that they can stop it. But I gave it 5 stars and I really loved it, and I really want to read the next one, but I'll have to buy it. So last book that I read for 2018 is A Curse of Ash and Ember by Jerry Sparrow, and this was actually my first ever signed book signing book, and it says for Bianca, best Joe Sparrow, and I am going to treasure this forever. And there was a book signing at my local Dimmicks store, as she is a local author, and so I went and I got my book signed and I was just so happy. I gave this 4 stars. It's super cute. I definitely recommend it to everybody. It's the start of a series. The other books have not been released quite yet, but I'm very excited for the rest of them to be released. and it's basically about a girl called Elodie, and she decides to get a job, or I think she gets kicked out of home, but she goes off to get a job as a cleaner for a witch, and the witch teaches her witch skills. And yeah, it's quite a salty relationship originally. The witch is quite salty towards Elodie, and Elodie doesn't quite know what she's done wrong, but then we find out that there is the old witch, and the old witch is coming back, and the old witch is evil. So everybody needs to read this. Everybody. So that is all the books that I read for 2018. This is a very long video, and I'm so sorry it took so long, but I read a fair few books. There's a huge pile next to me that I now have to clean up, but it's fine. So I hope you enjoyed that, and now I've got a big mess to clean up. So thank you, subscribe, like this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!